Monday, March 23, 2026, was a bloodbath for HYBE investors as the stock tanked over 15%, sparking a viral narrative that BTS's grand comeback had flopped due to shockingly low attendance. Major media outlets pointed to photos of scattered crowds and a reported 48,000 headcount as proof the group's star power was fading. But the reality on the ground tells a completely different story of aggressive police lockdowns and a massive economic windfall that the cameras miss. While the financial world panicked over geopolitical tensions and profit-taking, the empty streets were actually a result of the strictest security protocols in Seoul's history, designed to disperse fans for safety rather than signal a lack of interest, ultimately culminating in a staggering $1.1 billion economic impact that proves this wasn't a failure, but a misunderstood masterpiece of crowd control. Let's start with the so-called empty streets. The media ran with a specific number, roughly 48,000 people. They cited data from Seoul City's urban system, and on the surface, compared to the pre-show hype of 200,000 to 260,000 expected attendees, it looked like a disaster. But here is where a little bit of technical knowledge blows the whole story wide open. That 48,000 figure wasn't a lie, technically, but it was a snapshot of a specific moment at a specific spot, the peak headcount inside the main barricaded area at 8 p.m. It didn't count the tens of thousands of people streaming in from side streets packed into nearby cafes or stuck in the massive human loops created by police crowd control. HYBE's own data, which aggregated mobile carrier signals and real-time connections, painted a very different picture, estimating over 104,000 people in the immediate vicinity. And if you look at the broader economic footprint, the Korean Culture and Tourism Institute estimated the actual reach was far higher. So why the massive discrepancy? Why did the world see photos of scattered crowds and assume BTS had lost their pull? The answer lies in the security measures, which were arguably the strictest Seoul has ever seen for a public event. This wasn't just a concert, it was a geopolitical event. With global tensions running high and the memory of the Itaewon tragedy still fresh in the national consciousness, the Seoul Metropolitan Police weren't taking any chances. They effectively shut down the grid. We're talking about a situation where trains skipped the Gwanghwamun stop, buses were rerouted, and the area from Gyeongbokgung Palace to the statue of King Sejong was barricaded hours before the show even started. If you were a fan trying to get close, you weren't just walking into a square. You were navigating a labyrinth of roadblocks and security check that would make an airport look lax. Fans reported having to walk several kilometers just to get near the perimeter, hauling luggage and battling exhaustion, only to be met with relentless whistles and orders to keep moving. The police weren't just controlling the crowd, they were actively dispersing it to prevent any single point from becoming a crush hazard. This aggressive containment strategy created a bizarre optical illusion. Because people without seated tickets were not allowed to stand still, the crowd didn't look like a dense, compact mass of fans. Instead, it looked scattered. They were forced into a continuous moving circle around the venue, walking for hours in loops just to stay in the general area. If you looked down from a drone or saw a quick snapshot, it might have looked like low interest. But if you were on the ground, the reality was thousands of people desperate to stay, but physically forced to keep moving. This wasn't lack of interest, it was crowd management by exclusion, and the logic behind it was terrifyingly sound. Police later confirmed they were prepared for a worst-case scenario of 260,000 people, and in the current global climate, with threats of terrorism and political unrest, erring on the side of too strict was the only way to ensure a live-streamed global event didn't turn into a tragedy. The fact that the event finished without a single major incident isn't proof that the security was unnecessary. It's proof that it worked. Now let's pivot to the stock market, because this is where the flop narrative really falls apart. The media would have you believe that HYBE's stock crashed because of those low attendance numbers. But if you zoom out even slightly, the correlation vanishes. March 23rd wasn't just a bad day for HYBE, it was a terrible day for the entire South Korean market. The KOSPI, the benchmark index, fell over 6.49%. Samsung Electronics, the country's biggest company, dropped nearly 6.6%. SM Entertainment fell over 9%, JYP dropped nearly 7%, and YG took a nearly 10% hit. The entire entertainment sector was bleeding, and it wasn't because BTS fans didn't pack the square tight enough. It was macroeconomics. Global investors were spooked by escalating tensions in the Middle East involving the US and Iran, leading to a broad sell-off of risk assets. Entertainment stocks are high risk, high reward, and they are the first to go when investors get nervous about geopolitical stability. Furthermore, the drop in HYBE stock follows a pattern we've seen time and time again in the industry: sell the news. Historically, when a major anticipated event occurs, a world tour announcement, a comeback, a milestone, stocks often dip. Why? Because investors buy in before the event to ride the hype, and the moment the event happens, they cash out to lock in profits. It happened back in January when the massive world tour was announced, and it happened here. If the stock had surged, the headlines would have read BTS conquers Wall Street and Gwanghwamun. Since it dropped, they wrote turnout disappoints. It's a lazy narrative that ignores the mechanics of the market. The fundamentals of the group haven't changed. The album was performing spectacularly, with tracks like Swim and Body to Body dominating global charts on Spotify and Apple Music for days. The Netflix live stream hit #1 in 77 countries. The product was a success. The market just had a panic attack. But perhaps the most damning evidence against the failure narrative is the economic impact. You don't generate $1 billion of economic activity from an empty street. According to estimates by Money Today, applying the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute's input-output analysis model, the event generated roughly 1.45 trillion Korean won, or about 1.1 billion USD, in total economic impact. This surpasses their previous concert estimates from 2022. Local businesses didn't see a scattered crowd, they saw a gold rush. Convenience stores near the venue, like CU and GS25, reported sales spikes of up to 270% and 378% respectively compared to the previous week. The top-selling items tell the real story: batteries, hand warmers, and power banks. Fans bought so many batteries for their light sticks that 4 packs of ULA batteries jumped to the top of sales rankings. Even Jin's associated brand, HYBE, saw a sales increase of over 1,700%. If the crowd was really that thin and disinterested, who was buying all this stuff? Who was packing the hotels and renting out karaoke rooms to watch the live stream? The disconnect between the media reports and the business receipts is staggering. There were articles circulating about convenience store owners being ruined by unsold kimbap, or a wedding being destroyed because guests couldn't get through. But follow-up investigations and ground reports found zero evidence of these victims. The photos of unsold food turned out to be recycled images from years ago. The ruined wedding? Police had deployed buses to ferry guests with invitations through the restricted zones. These stories were noise, fabricated or exaggerated outrage designed to feed a hate algorithm that thrives on taking down giants. It's a phenomenon RM himself touched on during a live stream, noting that in today's world, even hate is a form of love. If people truly didn't care, they wouldn't bother constructing elaborate narratives to tear the event down.